This is Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. If you have an existing estate plan or are in the market for one, Todd Lutsky is here to answer your questions and help you plan for later life. Ask Todd is presented by Cushing Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 35 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Visit CushingDolan.com. Now, here's Todd Lutsky.
And we are joined now by Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing Dolan for Ask Todd. It's your chance to ask Todd your questions right here on the air. The number for our studio is 888-205-2263. So if you have an estate planning question for Todd Lutsky, this is your chance to ask him. Again, that number is 888-205-2263. So give us a call, get in the queue because, again, the lines do fill up. So if you want to make sure you can get your question over to Todd, that number is 888-205-2263. Mr. Lutsky, how are you today?
I am never better, and you?
Struggling.
Uh-oh.
Couldn't find my belt this morning.
I hate when that happens.
Instead, I used a bunch of watches to hold up my pants.
Watches?
Yeah, it was a waste of time.
I'm sure it was.
Waste of time. Todd, let's talk a little bit about life estates.
Sure.
Let's say that someone has their primary residence in a life estate currently.
Okay, currently.
How do they know if that is something that they should keep as their estate plan or if they should change their estate plan to something different?
I'm going to ask you just a follow-up question to clarify something.
It's a hypothetical. There's not really much to follow up on. This just, it's...
Is the life estate, is the remainder interest in the hands of the children? Or did they put the remainder interest in an irrevocable trust?
In this hypothetical, I don't know because I haven't talked to the people in a while. So why don't you run through those two scenarios and tell me which one means what?
So, folks, I'm going to tell you that that's important because there are two ways to create these life estates. I like to say the right way and the wrong way, but I probably shouldn't say that. But the one way is to transfer the house to the children and reserve a life estate. And if that's the hypothetical we're dealing with, then, Chuck, I'll tell you that family could probably live with that. I mean, if they're, depending on their age, if they've done it a long time ago and they're in their 80s and they don't want to reset a 5-year clock, they might want to just keep it. I mean, it does avoid probate. It does, protect the asset from the nursing home, and it will give the kids a step up in basis. The thing I don't like about it is that, if these folks, and again, depending on age, and I think age is really the key point here, Chuck. How old are you and how long ago did you do it? If they ever wanted to move and maybe downsize to Florida or go up to New Hampshire or wherever, and they wanted to sell it, that's where the problems occur because money goes to the kids, a big chunk of it, based on a table. Capital gain taxes are allocated to the children based on their percentage ownership. And they don't get a capital gains exclusion, so it creates adverse tax problems. And then mom and dad don't have the money they need to buy another house if they want to downsize. And if the kids give it back to them, then they have all the money at risk all over again for the nursing home, and they blew their entire plan. So lots to think about when you have your life estate. So I'm not loving that arrangement. And the best way to fix it, if it's set up that way, folks, might not be to give up your life estate and create a new 5-year waiting period, but it might be to set up an irrevocable trust that you didn't have before and ask the kids, assuming they're friendly, to transfer their interest into your Medicaid irrevocable trust. If you do that, now you've not started a new 5-year waiting period for yourself. The kids have one, but so what? They're young. And you now have regained all the control you need over that house. Now you can sell it without any complications, any adverse tax consequences. You don't need the kids' permission. The money will be available in the trust to buy that new house that you want to buy if you want to move. You don't have to worry about resetting a 5-year waiting period. I mean, folks, the benefits of having the remainder interest be an irrevocable trust versus the children, which again, that's the other way of doing it, far exceed the benefits of having it set up with the kids as the remainder interest. So I think, as long-winded as that may be, Chuck, I think that might have answered it.
I'm very upset with you right now, Todd.
Uh-oh. What did I do?
My second question that I had written down that I was going to ask you was, how hard is it to unwind a life estate and shift to a different strategy? And unfortunately, you didn't even give me a chance to ask it because you answered it in that second piece. So
we're on the same wavelength. That's what we are. That's what we do.
I don't want to be on the same wavelength as you, but such is life.
It is.
In any case, our studio line here is 888-205-2263. So if you have a question about your estate plan for Todd, get calling right now. That number again is 888-205-2263, and we are going right to your calls after this break.
Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky every Wednesday at 10:30, only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
As promised, we are going to go right to your calls. If you have a question for Todd Lutsky, the studio number here is 888-205-2263. Let's go first to Don on the Cape. Don, what's your question for Todd Lutsky?
I have 75. I have an old will, about 30-plus years old. I have two boys, and bought a house for $35,000. It's now worth about $500,000 or $600,000. Should I have some kind of estate set up, or financially, what's the best way to go?
So you said you're 75. Are you single, widow, divorced?
Married. Is both of us still kicking around.
Okay, great. And you said you had the house, but did you mention any other assets? Like if you had to ask about just your monetary assets, like savings, checking, investments, IRAs?
No, very small.
So it's really all about this house.
That's right.
Okay. And folks, it's really a good question, because a lot of people, the house is their biggest asset. And oftentimes it's not just the house. It might want to be kept because of its location. It might want to be kept because a family member may need a place to live in the future, which can actually be more valuable than $600,000, if you ask me. So should you be doing an estate plan with the size of your estate? Yeah. I mean, I think you have enough. I think protecting a house is enough of a reason to do it. You have two children that sound like you want to provide for and take care of. So if those are your goals, then yeah, I think an estate plan is in order. If that's what you're asking, a broad question, yes, you should do an estate plan. I think the next question that's being begged is the type of estate plan that might be right for you. Or really, I'm going to throw it out there. Anyone listening, you can put your own facts to this case, right? Maybe you have two houses. It's still, what's your, the age, I think, is the most important piece here. So at 75, I would think that, probably protecting the asset from the cost of long-term care might be on the list. If it is on the list, then we need to be thinking about an irrevocable trust, okay? Not a revocable trust. In fact, I had a call earlier this morning before the show where an individual called and said, the person, the husband is going in the nursing home, and they had a revocable trust done. And I had to explain to them that the revocable trust years ago did not do anything to protect assets from the nursing home. And so that's why I want to stress in this case, irrevocable would be the type of trust. The next question I would think about would be, how many trusts do I need? After all, we're married. Do I need a husband trust and a wife trust? You hear that all the time. I'm going to say no. In this case, you can probably get away with one joint irrevocable trust. Why? Because the size of the estate is under $1 million, which is the current Massachusetts death tax exemption. If you're listening in another state, just apply the same fact pattern, but use your own state estate tax exemption number to answer the question. So I'm already thinking, Don, one trust and irrevocable would be the way to go for you and your wife. And I would take the house and then transfer it into the trust. If you have a mortgage, then I would reserve a life estate in the property to preserve the mortgage. If you don't, I'd probably stay away from the life estate idea. And so at the end of the day, this kind of trust is going to provide you with protection from the nursing home. It's going to keep you in control and your wife in control of your house. It's going to allow you to live there and sell it and buy another one if you want to. It's going to protect it from the nursing home and avoid probate, and you're going to have no estate tax anyway because you're under the exemption. So, Don, long-winded answer, but you know what? I think that might help a lot of folks in terms of deciding how to get started when you do your estate plan. And interestingly enough, in this example, we had to discuss a life estate. Folks, we're giving away a guide called Calculating the Consequences of a Life Estate. There are many reasons to do them and not do them, right? I can tell you there's about 3 times I do them, and they're listed in here. And one of them was just discussed in this article, in this caller. If you have a mortgage, you kind of got to reserve a life estate to keep the mortgage. But there's only a couple of other times I like to use them because as we went through the issues here, there can be some downsides to having a life estate. Folks, if you have one, if you don't have one, if you're going to get one, if you want to undo one, learn first how they work. Calculating the Consequences of a Life Estate, 866-848-5699, or go to our website, legalexchangeshow.com. You can download the guide there. Again, 866-848-5699 or legalexchangeshow.com.
Talking with Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing Dolan. Todd, one of the things that you touched on there was the age at which someone is potentially doing different estate planning.
Yeah.
I'm wondering in general, can you take us through just the different types of planning that individuals should consider at different points in their life, kind of from, even just quickly from, 30s up through 50s and 60s?
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense for folks because, everybody that's listening has different situations, different ages, different family dynamics. All of those things should be taken into account. But when we think about an age, right, I had a young couple call, just had 2 kids, minors. Should we do estate planning? We don't feel like we have a lot of money. We're not rich yet. Folks, it's not necessarily about rich. You could have a house, you could have some money, but your children cannot own anything when they're minors. And I'd rather have a trust own things for my children than have a guardian own things for my children. So I think when you're younger, the age sort of dictates the planning if you have minor children. And the type of trust there would probably be revocable, right? Revocable. And then I think you can look at things as you get older, right? And maybe you're in your mid-50s. You might be thinking about just doing planning. And then you want to look at the size of your estate, right? If you have a large enough estate and you're not worried about nursing home planning and you're more worried about taxes and probate and, providing that bloodline for your children and maybe protecting your children from future divorces and creditors and the like, hey, revocable trusts work just fine. Nothing wrong with those. And a lot of people do them. So revocable trust planning as we move through our life. And then I think when you get to the older stages, now I don't know what's old anymore. I don't like to dictate that, but I do like to say that, 60 and over, I'm going to probably ask you if one of your objectives of coming in today was to protect assets from a nursing home, because it does take 5 years to do that. And we need to explore what those options are for you if that's on your list. And if it is, I would think 60 and over is the age where I would be thinking about the irrevocable trust that I just described. So folks, those are the kinds of ages that just dictate the type of trust you do. And my last comment again is everybody always asks how many. The size of your estate's going to matter as to whether you do one trust or if you're married, you do a husband and a wife trust.
Todd Lutsky, thank you so much for joining us today.
Always a pleasure.
The views expressed in this segment are solely those of Cushing and Dolan. Armstrong Advisory does not provide any legal or tax advice. Please consult with your legal or tax advisor on such matters. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.